Now that you have your specific supply chain components identified, let's look at some of the pain points and some of the risky factors we have to take into account and some possible mitigation strategies for those components so we can have a healthy supply chain in the long run. Some of the main components I suggest you'll be looking at and how to break it down in granularly would be looking at manufacturing of raw materials, manufacturing of intermediate goods, manufacturing facilities themselves, finished product suppliers, inbound transportation when the product is coming to my warehouse, my own warehouse and fulfillment to get my product to my customer, and the outbound transportation to get the product to the finished customer. Those would be the main components I would look at, and I would assess each of the components by two different factors. First would be the level of impact if something happened to that component, and then the likelihood of occurrence of something happening in that component as well. Level of impact in general, I would put it from catastrophic to negligible. The likelihood of occurrence, I would put it from unlikely to extremely likely, just to see how much that might actually happen in my supply chain and how realistic it is to worry about it from now. After I have all that set up, we can start looking at mitigation strategies. And I would always suggest to develop a mitigation risk strategy just to help have an uninterrupted supply chain in the long run, especially through duplication. Duplication and finding substitute products or substitute suppliers throughout the supply chain is very important and helps you keep an uninterrupted supply chain and getting your products from a source to your warehouse and to your customers. So we do have in our doc kit number 4.3 as a template to help us go through all of this, but I'm going to go through one of the examples for my example company of a sustainable reclaimed wood furniture company. So looking at our example, I'm going to first look at a few different supply chain components. First of which, I would be looking at the manufacturing process, and in more particular, the raw materials. I'll be worried about a potential risk of a wood supply disruption, and I'm going to be looking at the wood supply disruption from my first assessed supplier, which was supplier A1, for example. From that wood supply disruption, what would be the level of impact? How much would it hurt me if there was a disruption in his wood supply? It would be pretty major. But what is the likelihood of occurrence? I categorized it as unlikely. It's not something I need to be totally worried about because it's not something that is going to happen due to the large amount of raw materials that I know my supplier has on hand already. So when I look at that risk as a wood supply disruption for supplier A1, I have to try to develop a mitigation strategy. In my case, I would want to look at backup local raw goods suppliers, or even a different type of wood, or even different types of raw materials I could be using to making my product in case something happens in the supply chain. So what would be that corrective action for that mitigation strategy? I would just keep a backup contact information, backup quotations for wood supply, and just backup alternatives to substitute that supplier's wood raw materials in case something happens to it. So that would be one of the examples as to how I would go through the specific supply chain component, look at the level of impact and the likelihood of occurrence to build a mitigation strategy and a corrective action in case something happens to that component. You can go through your own components and build it as detailed as possible just to have your plan ready in case something happens. This can all be done through, again, sheet 4.3. We have a template ready for all of this. So at this point in time, we know what we're selling, who we're selling to, who's going to be providing our product, and how is that product going exactly from the raw material suppliers to the manufacturer, to the supplier, to my warehouse, to my customer. We know how that full supply chain is developed, and we know potential mitigation strategies in case there's any risks involved in anything that happens in time. So we know how our product is moving. Now let's get into the next section to see exactly how we're going to sell our product and how we're going to be making money as an e-commerce business through our sales channel strategy section, MFP5.